The auction block. The air inside the hall was thick with heat and noise, 1,000 alien voices rising in a chaos of excitement. Light shimmered off polished stone, illuminating the elevated auction stage at the room's center. Creatures of every shape crowded the tiered stands, scaled, feathered, multi-eyed, each craning for a better view of the spectacle about to unfold. At the center of that spectacle stood her. She had been stripped bare, her wrists bound in glimmering restraints that hummed faintly with suppressive energy. The platform beneath her vibrated as the auctioneer, a towering insectoid with jointed limbs and serrated mandibles, slammed his staff against the floor to silence the crowd. "Behold," he cried, his voice amplified by the hall's speakers, booming across the chamber. "A rare specimen, taken from the outer fringes. Young, strong, unspoiled. See the symmetry, the vitality. How often do such treasures grace our market?" The crowd jeered, laughed, whistled in alien tones. Some barked out the opening bids. Others simply stared, their eyes glimmering with greed. She held her chin up though her heart pounded in terror. It was not the first time she had been forced to stand like this. Her body was no longer hers. It had been claimed and reclaimed too many times. Yet the humiliation never dulled. To be displayed so openly before strangers, to be reduced to flesh and currency, stripped of name and worth, it hollowed her. The auctioneer raised a limb toward her. See the rarity of her eyes. Mark the strength in her form. She will serve as companion, ornament, or labor. Who will begin at 5,000 credits. Hands, claws, tendrils, appendages, shut up. Bidding began, fierce and quick. The numbers rose in a blur, each call of value hammering her deeper into despair. 10,000. 15. 20. She kept her gaze forward, but the mocking stares pressed against her skin like claws. She longed for invisibility, for the chance to melt into the platform and vanish. Instead, she stood exposed, every eye consuming her. She thought of her home, of forests under twin suns, of her family, lost forever. The auctioneer's mandibles clacked in satisfaction as the bidding war escalated. 35,000. 40. Who dares higher? The crowd roared, each alien desperate to possess what the others wanted. And then, in the swell of noise, a single voice cut through. Calm, even, strange. 200,000. The hall went silent. Every head turned toward the source. At the rear of the chamber stood a figure apart from the crowd. Humanoid, upright, smaller than most of the other buyers. His features were softer than the scaled and armored species around him, his build less imposing. Yet the number he had spoken froze the auction in an instant. The auctioneer clicked his mandibles in surprise. 200,000. From a human. Murmurs spread. A human? Hey! Few in the galaxy had dealings with them. They were considered a minor race, strange and unpredictable, too moralistic for commerce. The insectoid recovered quickly, his voice booming again. We have 200,000. Do I hear more? But no hands rose. The number was too large, too absurd. None would match it. Going once, the auctioneer said, though his tone carried unease. Going twice. The hall held its breath. Sold. The gavel fell, echoing like a final verdict. The restraints around her wrists unlocked with a hiss. Her knees nearly buckled. She had expected another alien master, another round of degradation. Instead, she felt a shadow cross the stage. The human moved through the crowd, his stride unhurried but steady. Whispers followed him like ripples. His eyes, unlike the predatory stares of the others, did not linger on her exposed body. They met her gaze instead, steady, piercing, almost gentle. When he reached her, he did not seize her arm or shove her forward. Instead, he unclasped the dark cloak from his own shoulders and draped it over her trembling form. Warmth enveloped her, heavy and soft against her skin. She gasped despite herself, clutching it close. For the first time in what felt like years, she was covered, shielded. The crowd erupted in confusion. What is he doing? Why hide her? Humans are mad. The auctioneer's mandibles clacked furiously, but he said nothing. Money was money, and the human had paid. She dared a glance at her new buyer. His expression revealed nothing. Calm, composed, unreadable. He extended a hand toward the edge of the stage. "Come," he said simply. Her body moved before her mind caught up, legs carrying her beside him. The cloak trailed behind her, swallowing the stays of the crowd. Together they descended the platform, the murmur of voices rising like storm winds around them. She expected at any moment for him to yank the cloak away, to reveal her again for his own amusement. Instead, his hand brushed lightly at her elbow, guiding, not forcing. They passed through the wide doors of the auction hall, the noise fading behind them. In the cooler air outside, she breathed for the first time without a weight pressing against her chest. Still, fear lingered. Who was this man? Why had he spent such a sum? What would he demand in return? He glanced at her, then away again, as if sensing her unspoken questions. He did not speak. Instead, he adjusted the cloak around her shoulders so it covered her more fully, then turned his gaze forward, leading her toward the distant docking bays. Her steps slowed. She wanted to ask why. Why cover her? Why buy her? Why look at her as though she were more than just a body? But the words tangled in her throat. For now, she followed, wrapped in borrowed warmth, shielded by a stranger's strange kindness. She walked out of the hall where she had been stripped bare before many. And for the first time in years, she was not just property on display. She was hidden, protected, and utterly bewildered. The cloak. The night air outside the auction house carried the sharp tang of ozone and engine exhaust. Starships roared overhead, their thrusters painting streaks of fire against the darkened sky. The human moved quickly, but never so fast that she stumbled to keep pace. His steps were measured, as though he were conscious of her every faltering movement. She clutched the cloak tighter around herself. The fabric was coarse, heavy with the scent of travel, smoke, dust, and faint traces of rain. Yet to her it felt like a shield, more precious than any jewel. For the first time in what felt like forever, the stays of others slid off her instead of piercing her. Still, her mind churned with suspicion. She had been bought before. They all began the same way. Kind gestures to lure her guard down, followed by the inevitable demands, the exploitation, the chains dressed in different colors. Perhaps this human was cleverer than most. That was all. They wove through the crowded streets leading to the docking bays. Merchants hawked strange foods, bright crystals, and weapons forged from alloys she could not name. Slaves shuffled past in shackles, their owners tugging at chains. She turned her face away, her grip tightening on the cloak. Everywhere, eyes followed them. Some with curiosity, some with disdain. Aliens whispered among themselves. A human bought her? At that price? For what purpose? At last they reached a quieter avenue. The roar of the marketplace dimmed, replaced by the steady hum of power conduits running along the walls. The human slowed his stride, finally speaking. His voice was calm, almost ordinary. "Are you hurt?" The question startled her. She blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. "What?" "Your wrists," he said, nodding toward the faint red marks left by the restraints. "They bind tight. Are you hurt?" Her throat went dry. No one had ever asked that. She glanced down at the marks, then back at him. "No, just so." He nodded once, as though that answer satisfied something. Then he fell silent again, eyes scanning the path ahead. The silence stretched. She could not stand it. "Why?" she asked suddenly. He glanced at her, brow faintly furrowed. "Why what? Why did you cover me?" Her voice trembled despite her effort to steady it. "No one does that. They all want to see. To show. Why hide me?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze lingered on her face, not in hunger, but as though he was searching for the right words. At last he said, "Because you looked cold." Cold? The word landed strangely in her ears. She had been humiliated, degraded, terrified. But cold? It seemed so small, so absurd. Yet he had spoken it with such sincerity that she almost laughed. "You spent more than anyone would dare," she pressed, her voice rising with a note of anger now. 200,000 credits. No one wastes that kind of wealth without expecting something in return. What is it you want from me?" He stopped walking. The corridor lights cast his features in sharp relief. His eyes, deep-set and steady, held hers with unshaken calm. "What I want," he said slowly, "is for you to walk without shame. No one should be paraded like that. Not in front of a crowd. Not anyway." The words lodged in her chest, heavy as stone. She searched his face for deception, for the hidden cruelty she had learned to expect. But his expression betrayed nothing but quiet conviction. She turned away, unsettled. "You don't know what you're saying. That's how this galaxy works. Everything is bought. Everything is sold. Her voice cracked. "You can't change that." "Maybe not," he admitted. He resumed walking, slower this time. "But I don't have to take part in it." The conversation left her unsteady, emotions tangled. Suspicion battled against a flicker of something she had not felt in years. Hope. She tried to smother it, to protect herself. Hope was dangerous. It could be crushed too easily. They reached the docking bay. Ships lined the cavernous space, their hulls gleaming under floodlights. The human led her toward a modest vessel tucked into the far corner, its paint scuffed but its engines humming with quiet readiness. He paused at the base of the boarding ramp. "Hungry?" She blinked. The question was so mundane, so jarringly normal, that she almost laughed. Hungry? She hadn't eaten properly in days, but the notion of someone asking instead of commanding left her speechless. Her silence was answer enough. He motioned her up the ramp. Inside, the ship smelled faintly of oil and steel, but it was clean, functional. No chains, no cages, no evidence of slaves. He gestured toward a narrow bench along the wall. "Sit. I'll bring food." She hesitated, half expecting a trap. But exhaustion overcame suspicion. She sank onto the bench, pulling the cloak tighter, watching him move with quiet efficiency. He rummaged through storage, returning with a sealed packet and a flask of water. He handed them to her without ceremony. Not much, but better than nothing. Her fingers trembled as she accepted them. The packet opened to reveal simple nutrient bread, plain and dry. But to her it tasted like a feast. She devoured it quickly, washing it down with water so clear it made her throat ache. The human sat across from her, not watching her eat, but instead adjusting a small device on his wrist. He gave her space, as though the act of feeding herself was something private. When at last she finished, warmth spread through her weary limbs. She met his eyes again, uncertain. "You treat me differently. Not like the others." "I'm not like the others," he said simply. She had no answer. The words lingered, unsettling and strangely comforting all at once. As fatigue overtook her, she pulled the cloak tighter, curling against the bench. Her eyes drifted shut, though her mind still whirled with confusion. She did not trust him. Not yet. But for the first time in memory, she slept without fear of hands tearing the cloak away. And in that fragile peace, a question haunted her dreams. What kind of being spends everything he has, not to own, but to cover? The alien woman's story. The hum of the ship's engines was steady, like a heartbeat beneath a metal floor. She woke to it, disoriented for a moment, then remembered the cloak, the food, the human. The cloak still lay over her shoulders, heavy and warm. She tightened it reflexively before sitting up. Across the narrow cabin, the human was at the ship's console, his broad shoulders hunched slightly as he keyed in coordinates. He glanced back when he heard her say, "You slept." Her lips parted, but no words came. It struck her then. She had not truly slept in years. Not the restless dozing of chains and cages, but actual sleep, where her body dared to trust the silence. "You'll need more of it," he added, returning his focus to the console. "You're worn thin." She bristled. His tone carried no insult, yet her instincts flared. "And why should you care?" He didn't answer immediately. The console chimed, locking in their trajectory. Only then did he swivel in his chair to face her. His eyes held that same calm steadiness, frustrating in its lack of malice. "Because you're not livestock. You're a person." The words landed like a blow. She turned away, staring at the floor. "You don't know me." "Then tell me," he said simply. She froze. The cloak rustled in her hands as she tightened her grip on it. Tell him. Why? No one had ever asked. No one had wanted her story. Only her service, her body, her obedience. He didn't press. Silence filled the cabin. Not the heavy silence of threat, but the open space of waiting. For the first time, the choice was hers. And against her better judgment, the words spilled out. My world was called Urail, she whispered, eyes fixed on the floor. A green place. Forests that reached the skies. Rivers that sang louder than storms. My people, we weren't fighters. We lived close to the earth. Close to each other. Her throat tightened. That was our mistake. She swallowed hard. Raiders came when I was still young. Metal ships tearing the sky. We had no weapons to fight them. They burned the forests, dragged us from our homes. I remember her voice shook. I remember my mother's hands, pulling me behind her. And then the fire. When I woke, I was in chains. The human said nothing. He didn't interrupt, didn't pity. He just listened. I was sold the next day, she continued, voice brittle, to one who wanted a trophy. Then another, and another. Each time, the chains changed, but they were always there. Sometimes they wanted me for work. Sometimes her stomach churned. Sometimes worse. Her fingers dug into the cloak. You learn not to look at their faces, not to speak unless spoken to be invisible until you're dragged into the light again. She finally lifted her eyes, meeting his. Her voice turned hard. So don't pretend I'm anything more than that. A body to be bought. A thing for others to own. You paid for me. So say what it is you want, and stop playing this game. The words echoed in the cabin, sharp as knives. But the human didn't flinch. His gaze stayed steady, unshaken. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but there was an edge of steel beneath it. I told you before, he said. I don't want anything from you. I bought you so no one else could. Her breath caught. That's a lie. It's the truth, he said, leaning forward slightly. Where I come from, we don't believe people can be owned. Not ever. The idea of selling someone, parading them in front of strangers like an animal, it disgusts us. His jaw tightened. When I saw you on that stage, I couldn't stand by. So I didn't. She shook her head, unable to accept it. You spent more than most would earn in a lifetime. For nothing. No one does that. His eyes softened, though his voice remained firm. Maybe no one you've known. But where I'm from, some things matter more than credits. Dignity. Choice. Freedom. Freedom. The word struck her like an old wound reopening. She almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Freedom was a story children whispered in cages to keep from breaking. She turned away, staring at the stars through the small viewport. Her voice came low, almost bitter. You don't understand. In this galaxy, freedom is an illusion. Chains are everywhere, seen or unseen. You'll learn that soon enough. Maybe, he said quietly. But even if the whole galaxy believes it, I don't have to. His defiance startled her. He spoke as though he stood against the weight of every world and didn't care if he was crushed. It was reckless, foolish, and yet there was something in it that made her chest ache. Silence fell again, but it was different this time. Not heavy with despair, but fragile, uncertain. She shifted on the bench, the cloak sliding around her shoulders. You risked much, she said finally. Others will notice. They don't like humans already. Buying me that way, it will cause trouble. A faint smile touched his lips. Trouble finds us easily enough. We might as well find it for the right reasons. His words should have unsettled her further, but instead she found herself studying him. He was not like the others, his calm not born of cruelty, his gaze not hungry but steady. For the first time, she wondered if he meant what he said. The engines thrummed beneath her feet, carrying them further from the world of chains. She didn't know what awaited her in the stars ahead. Perhaps betrayal. Perhaps another cage. But wrapped in his cloak, fed and listened to for the first time in years, she allowed a dangerous thought to flicker to life. What if he truly meant it? What if freedom wasn't just a story? She closed her eyes, clutching the cloak tighter. The thought terrified her more than any chain. The human's motives. The stars drifted past the viewport like a sea of scattered fire. The ship's engines hummed steadily, carrying them farther from the slave world with every passing hour. For the first time in years, she was not bound by chains, yet the weight of captivity still pressed against her chest. She sat curled on the bench, the cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Across the cabin, the human moved with quiet purpose, checking readouts on the console, adjusting the trajectory, tapping in code she didn't understand. She watched him cautiously, torn between gratitude and suspicion. His words echoed in her mind. I don't want anything from you. You're not livestock. Beautiful lies, perhaps. Or madness. No one in the galaxy thought that way. At last she broke the silence. Why? He glanced over his shoulder. Why what? Why risk yourself? Why spend so much for me? Her voice cracked with bitter disbelief. You could have walked away. You should have walked away. He leaned back in the chair, folding his arms across his chest. For a moment he studied her, eyes sharp and unblinking. Then he spoke, his tone calm but edged with something harder. Because it was wrong. The words were so simple, so absurd, that she let out a short, humorless laugh. Wrong? That's your answer? Yes. His gaze did not waver. Where I come from, we don't parade people on stages. We don't strip them and sell them like livestock. The idea itself. His jaw tightened, his voice low with disgust. It makes me sick. She shook her head. You're a fool, then. This galaxy thrives on chains. You think one man's outrage matters against the weight of it. Maybe not, he admitted. But it matters to me. And that's enough. His certainty unsettled her. She had seen arrogance before. But this was different. He wasn't boasting of power or wealth. He was stating a belief as if it were immovable stone. You don't understand, she whispered, voice trembling. You can't just buy someone and decide you've undone years of what they've lived through. You can't erase the chains. I'm not trying to erase them, he said. I'm trying to break them. Her breath caught. She stayed at him, her heart hammering. And what happens when the galaxy notices? When they come for me? For you? He shrugged, almost carelessly. Then they come. Let them. His calm defiance rattled her more than any threat could have. He spoke as though he bore the weight of empires on his back and didn't care if they crushed him. Her voice rose in frustration. Why? Why would you fight for someone you don't even know? His answer came without hesitation. Because you deserve better. The words hung in the air, soft yet immovable. She looked away quickly, blinking hard against the sting in her eyes. No one had ever said such a thing to her. Not once. Not in all the years since she had been dragged from Urail. Deserve better. To her, it was as alien as the stars outside. He didn't press. Instead, he rose from the chair and crossed the cabin. She tensed, expecting the mask to fall, the kindness to shift into something cruel. But he only crouched near her, keeping his distance respectful. Look at me, he said quietly. Reluctantly, she did. You're not property. Not to me. Not to anyone. You're a person. You always were. Don't let them convince you otherwise. The conviction in his voice cracked something deep inside her. Her hands tightened on the cloak, her chest aching with emotion she couldn't name. You speak as if words could change what I've endured, she whispered. Not words, he said. Choices. Choices. She almost laughed. I've never had a choice. Then you will now. She blinked, startled. What do you mean? When we're safe, you'll be free to go. Stay, if you want. Leave, if you'd rather. I won't stop you. Her heart lurched painfully. She stared at him as though he had spoken a language she didn't understand. Freedom was not an option. Freedom was a dream whispered in the dark, crushed beneath reality's weight. And yet he had spoken it so plainly, as though it were the simplest truth in the universe. You'd let me walk away, she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Yes, he said. Because you're not mine. You were never mine. Her throat closed. 4 years she had endured the opposite, hands gripping her like possession, voices claiming ownership over her body, her name, her very breath. And now here was this strange human, offering the unthinkable. Her eyes burned. She turned her face away, ashamed of the tears threatening to fall. You don't know what you're doing. You'll be hunted for this. marked as a traitor to the trade. He smiled faintly, almost grimly. Then let them mark me. I'd rather be hunted than complicit. The ship's engines rumbled, carrying them farther into the void. She sat in silence, her heart warring with itself. Part of her screamed not to believe him, that it was another trick, another mask. But another part, a small, fragile part, whispered that maybe, just maybe, he meant it. She dared a glance at him again. His gaze was turned toward the stars, expression set with quiet resolve. For the first time since her capture, she wondered if there truly was a species in this galaxy mad enough, kind enough, to fight against chains not their own. And for the first time in years, the faintest ember of hope stirred within her chest. Conflict in pursuit. The first sign of trouble came as a soft chime from the ship's console. The human leaned forward, scanning the readout. His expression shifted, the calm lines of his face sharpening into alert focus. She sat up on the bench, unease prickling her skin. "What is it?" He didn't answer immediately. Fingers danced across the controls, pulling up data streams. On the viewport, faint red blips appeared. Ships. Several of them, moving fast. "Pursues," he said finally, his voice steady but hard. "We've been tracked." Her stomach knotted. "They'll come for me. They always do." He shot her a glance, his tone firm. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Her throat tightened. She had seen others say such words before. Bravado meant to mask cowardice. But there was no false bravado in his voice. Only steel. The comms system crackled. A voice, guttural and mocking, filled the cabin. "Human vessel. Cut your engines. Return the stolen property. Do this, and we'll let you live." The human's jaw clenched. His hand hovered over the comm toggle, but he did not respond. Instead, he adjusted the ship's course, pushing the engines harder. The vessel lurched, stars streaking into lines as they accelerated. The voice returned, sharper now. "You cannot run, human. That creature belongs to the Syndicate. You defied our laws. Pay the price, or burn." Her breath came fast, panic flooding her chest. She had heard that tone before, seen what followed. Syndicate hunters never relented. "They'll kill you," she whispered. "Maybe," he said, eyes fixed on the controls. "But I won't hand you back to them." The ship shuddered as a blast of plasma fire skimmed past the hull. Lights flickered briefly, alarms chiming. She gripped the bench, her pulse racing. He spoke quickly now, focused. "Listen to me. They'll try to disable us. I'll need your help." She blinked in shock. "Me? I don't know anything about ships." "You know how to listen," he said sharply. "That's enough. When I tell you to, pull that lever." He pointed to a secondary console at her side. "And hold on." Another volley struck, closer this time. The ship bucked, groaning in protest. He grimaced, but his hands never faltered on the controls. The pursues closed in. Sleek Syndicate craft, built for speed and precision, their weapon ports glowing. "Now," he barked. She yanked the lever. The ship's rear thrusters flared, releasing a sudden burst of ionized gas. The pursuing ships veered, their sensors momentarily scrambled. The humans seized the opening, diving the vessel into a jagged asteroid field. Rocks the size of mountains loomed, spinning in chaotic orbits. She gasped. "Are you mad? We'll be crushed." "Better crushed by stone than chained again," he said grimly. The ship wove through the maze, dodging tumbling boulders by razor-thin margins. She clutched the seat, heart hammering, each near miss stealing her breath. Behind them, Syndicate craft gave chase, their pilots more cautious but relentless. One hunter ship fired. The blast struck an asteroid, splintering it into a storm of debris. Shards slammed into their hull, rattling the vessel like bones in a drum. The human cursed under his breath, steering hard. "Shields at 30%. Hold on." The asteroid belt thinned ahead, opening into clear space. But the hunters pressed closer, sensing their prey's path. "Why do you fight them?" she shouted over the alarms. "You could give me back. Save yourself." His reply came sharp. "Fierce. Because you're not theirs to take. Not anymore." The conviction in his voice shook her more than the ship's jolts. He meant it, truly meant it. Another blast rocked the cabin. Sparks flew from a console, filling the air with the acrid scent of burning circuits. He slammed a fist against the panel, forcing the systems back online. Almost there, he muttered. Ahead, a swirling cloud of pale blue light appeared. A nebula, its gases churning like a storm. The human angled the ship toward it. She stayed in disbelief. You're taking us into that. It'll fry the senses. We'll be blind. Exactly. His eyes gleamed with defiance. So will they. The ship plunged into the nebula. Instantly, static filled the screens. The stars vanished, swallowed by the swirling haze. Electric discharges arced across the hull, rattling the vessel violently. Behind them, the hunters hesitated, without senses, their wrists slamming into rocks hidden in the cloud. But still, some followed. The human's voice cut through the chaos. Get ready. When I say now, hit the lever again. She nodded, her palms slick with sweat. They sped deeper into the storm. The hull groaned under the strain, lightning flashing in bursts of blinding white. Now! She slammed the lever. The ship released a charged decoy pod, its signal flaring like a beacon before shorting out. The pursuing ships veered toward it, mistaking it for their target. Moments later, a crackling surge of energy ripped through the nebula. The hunters caught in its wake vanished in bursts of flame. Silence followed, broken only by the hum of their battered engines. Her breath came ragged, her body trembling. Slowly, she released her death grip on the console. They are gone, she whispered. For now, he said, easing the controls. His shoulders sagged, fatigue creeping into his expression. They'll send more eventually. But we bought time. She stared at him, bewildered. This human had risked his life, his ship, everything. For her. For someone he had no reason to protect. You could have died, she said softly. He glanced at her, the faintest of smiles tugging at his lips. So could you. I wasn't about to let that happen. Her chest tightened. She had lived years expecting nothing but cruelty, betrayal, and chains. Yet here was a man who defied empires for her sake. As the nebula's glow faded behind them and open space stretched wide ahead, she felt something stir inside her, a fragile warmth, foreign and terrifying. Hope, a fragile peace. The ship drifted in relative quiet. The nebula, with its storms and deadly flashes, lay far behind them. Space stretched vast and empty, filled only with the soft hum of the vessel's wounded engines. For the first time in hours, she unclenched her fists and realized her nails had left half-moon cuts in her palms. The human leaned back in the pilot's chair, exhaling slowly. His eyes, once razor-sharp with focus, softened into fatigue. Sweat clung to his brow, and faint smudges of ash marked his hands. You should rest, she murmured, her voice hesitant. He gave a short laugh, dry and tired. Not yet. Ship's taken a beating. Needs patching, or we'll be stranded before long. Her gaze drifted across the cabin. Panels sparked faintly. Lights flickered with irregular pulses. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burnt wiring. You saved us, she said quietly. His eyes flicked to her. We saved us. You helped. Her chest tightened. She had helped, yes, but only because he had told her how, trusted her to do it. No one had ever asked her to do more than obey, endure, or suffer. The silence between them stretched, but it was not the heavy silence of fear. It was uncertain, fragile, like something new being born. Finally, he rose. Come on, I'll show you something. She hesitated, then followed as he led her down a narrow corridor into a small maintenance bay. Tools and repair kits lined the walls, secured in magnetic racks. A floor hatch lay open, revealing the ship's humming guts. He crouched beside it, handing her a small device. Hold this. Steady. She obeyed, clutching the tool with both hands. He leaned into the hatch, sparks flying as he worked. His movements were efficient but careful, every adjustment deliberate. Minutes passed. She watched the way his jaw tightened in concentration, the way his hands moved with practiced certainty. The tool grew heavier in her grip, but she said nothing. When he finally withdrew, grime streaking his cheek, he accepted the tool back with a nod. Good. Thanks. Something about the simple acknowledgement made her throat ache. Gratitude toward her. Not mockery. Not orders bark like lashes. Why? She asked suddenly, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. Why do you fight for me? You don't even know me. He paused, wiping his hands on a rag. His gaze met hers, steady and unflinching. Because no one should be treated the way you were, he said simply. I saw you up there, on that platform, and I knew I couldn't walk away. Doesn't matter who you are. You're not property. Her breath caught. The words pressed against her chest, foreign and sharp. Not property. I don't understand you, she whispered. He smiled faintly. That makes two of us. Humans have a reputation for being stubborn fools. Maybe it's true. She lowered her gaze, staring at her hands. For so long, she had been defined by chains, by the cruel eyes of those who saw her as a thing. Could she really be more? Later, after repairs were made and the ship stabilized, he guided her to a different part of the vessel. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a small chamber unlike the rest. Plants grew here, verdant green leaves unfurling from hydroponic beds, tiny blossoms swaying gently in the recycled air. The scent hit her immediately, earthy, alive, something she had not breathed in years. She froze, overwhelmed. His voice softened. It's my garden. Helps me remember what life looks like beyond steel and stars. She stepped inside slowly, fingers brushing the delicate edge of a leaf. Its texture was soft, tender, real. I didn't know, she swallowed hard. I didn't know beauty like this still existed. Of course it does, he said quietly. You just haven't been allowed to see it. She sank to her knees beside the plants, inhaling deeply, tears stinging her eyes. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt something other than fear or despair. She felt alive. The human stood back, watching her silently. He did not intrude, did not demand. He simply allowed her space to breathe. After a long while, she looked up at him. What will happen now? The Syndicate won't stop. You know that. He nodded, expression grim. I know. They'll send more. But I don't plan on giving you back. We'll keep moving, find somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't reach. Her voice quavered. There's no such place. There's always a place, he countered firmly. Maybe not forever, but long enough. Long enough for you to decide who you want to be. His words struck her harder than any lash. Decide who you want to be. No one had ever offered her choice. What if I don't know? She asked. Then we'll figure it out together, he said. Her chest ached, her heart twisting painfully. Hope was dangerous. She knew that. Hope could be ripped away, leaving only sharper wounds. And yet, sitting among the green leaves, with his eyes steady on hers, she couldn't stop the fragile spark from flickering within her. That night, as she lay in the small cot he had prepared for her, she turned the words over in her mind. Not property, not theirs, a choice. For the first time in years, she dared to imagine a future where she was more than a possession. And though fears still coiled in her belly, she held that fragile spark close, guarding it fiercely. Tomorrow, the hunters might return. Tomorrow, everything might be torn away again. But tonight, she allowed herself to believe. Fire in the dark. The hum of the ship had become familiar, a steady heartbeat in the silence of space. For days, they drifted through the void, careful to avoid the Syndicate's patrol routes. Repairs had held. The humans slept little, always watching the stars with that wary, restless gaze. She, too, found sleep difficult, not because of fear, though it lingered, but because of possibility. For the first time in years, her thoughts stretched beyond survival. Each day in his company planted a fragile seed. Perhaps there was more to life than chains. But peace was fragile. The warning sirens shattered it in an instant. Red lights flared across the cabin. The ship jolted as if struck, and her body lurched sideways, slammed into the wall. Sparks rained from a console. The human cursed, steadying himself at the controls. They found us. Through the viewport, the Syndicate's vessel loomed, black steel, sharp edges like a predator's grin. Smaller escort craft darted ahead, angling to cut off their escape. Her breath caught. We can't outrun them. No, he said grimly, but we can fight. She froze. Fight? That ship will tear us apart. Maybe, he admitted, hands tightening on the controls. But I'd rather burn free than crawl back in chains. The word struck her like thunder. Burn free. She stared at him, at the fire blazing in his eyes. He was just one human, one fragile being against the might of the Syndicate, yet he would not bend. Something inside her broke free. The years of submission, of silence, of bowing her head. She felt them crack and shatter. Then let me help, she said. He looked at her, startled. I know their tactics, she continued, voice shaking but firm. I know how they move, where they strike. Use me. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Then he nodded once. All right, let's make them bleed. The first volley slammed into the hull, rattling the ship. Metal screamed in protest. He rolled the vessel sharply, and the escorts overshot, scattering. She gripped the console beside him, shouting over the alarms. They'll try to disable, not destroy. They want me back alive. Good, he growled. That means we get chances. The ship dove between the escorts, the human firing wildly at their flanks. Explosions flared like dying stars. 2 enemy craft spun out, smoking wrecks. But the Syndicate's capital ship loomed closer, its shadow swallowing the stars. Another hit. Panels blew out. She tasted smoke, coughing, as the ship shuddered under the impact. We can't take many more, she cried. He gritted his teeth, slamming controls. Then we finish it now. Her eyes widened. What are you? But she saw it, the trajectory, straight toward the Syndicate flagship. They'll never expect us to charge, he said, voice hard. Their shields are forward-focused. If we slip past and strike the belly. It's suicide, she whispered. He glanced at her. In his eyes, no fear, only fire. Better than slavery. Her heart hammered. For so long, she had clung to life at any cost, no matter how degrading. But now, she understood. There were worse things than death. She set her jaw. Then let's do it together. The ship roared forward, engines screaming. The flagship loomed ahead, a black mountain bristling with guns. Weapons fire rained down like a storm. Hold on, he shouted. She clung to the seat as the ship twisted and spun, weaving through the barrage. Explosions flared on all sides, light searing her eyes. Metal groaned as the hull took hit after hit. But somehow, they broke through. And then they were under the beast's shadow. Now, she cried. There, between the thrusters, the plating is weakest. He slammed the trigger. The ship's weapons screamed, spitting fire into the exposed belly of the flagship. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing through armor. Shockwaves hurled them sideways, spinning through debris. The Syndicate's giant shuddered, groaned, and then erupted in a blossom of flame. She gasped, shielding her eyes as light swallowed the darkness. When it cleared, the flagship was broken, its once proud hull torn apart, spilling fire and wreckage into the void. The escorts, stunned, scattered like frightened insects. None dared to continue the hunt. They had done it. Silence fell in the cabin, broken only by the hiss of damaged systems. The human slumped back in his seat, breathing hard. Sweat ran down his face, streaking the soot. She stared at him, at the man who had defied an empire and won. Slowly, she reached out, her hand trembling, and touched his arm. You're mad. He gave a weak laugh, teeth flashing. Maybe, but we're alive. Alive. The word echoed inside her. Not owned, not caged. Alive. For the first time in years, she smiled. Not the hollow mask she had worn for her captors, but a real smile. Small, uncertain, but hers. What now? She asked softly. He leaned back, eyes closing briefly. Now, we find somewhere they can't follow, and you decide what you want to do with your freedom. Her throat tightened. Freedom. She let the word settle, heavy and strange, on her tongue. She didn't know yet what it meant. She didn't know who she was without chains. But she knew one thing. She would not go back. She would walk into the unknown, step by step, and she would carry this fire, the fire he had given her, wherever it led. For the first time, the future was hers.